Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fargo podcast. We're the officially unofficial podcast for all things Fargo on television. I'm your host, A.Ron, and joining me today is...
Pete Peppers.
YouTuber Pete Peppers. So you might have heard a little tickle in Jim's throat on the last podcast that we recorded on Tuesday, and that's because he was coming down with COVID, it turns out. I'm expecting him to be a scratch for the next several podcasts, so I scrambled to all my podcasting and YouTuber buddies to see who could fill in, and Pete, our old friend, we've talked Expanse, Foundation, a bunch of stuff. I know there's been a couple other things, and now Fargo. You can find Pete Peppers on his YouTube channel at Pete Peppers. Pete, how are you liking this season as a whole? Kind of, I know you do videos each week on Fargo. What are you thinking about this latest season?
Yeah, I'm enjoying it pretty well. I think, we had talked a little bit before, and I've been listening to I started out listening to your podcast as, week to week, and I think a couple of the episodes I liked a bit more than you and Jim did. You guys seem to take a little bit longer to come around, but I think it's been pretty solid all the way through. I did rewatch a few of the seasons before this, and so I was kind of in that frame of mind where I was really looking forward to it.
In the zone, yeah.
Yeah, so 4 was kind of I covered that too, and I was kind of a little bit bummed on that one. So, yeah, I thought this was a big improvement over that, at least.
Historically, do you have a problem with how often Fargo shades through the supernatural? Because that's always been a little bugaboo for me and Jim. Like, we're really digging this kind of like hard-boiled true crime, skewed Midwestern thing, and then ghosts or aliens or whatever start happening, and we're like, I don't know. And they hit us hard and fast with it this season.
Yeah. No, I don't generally have a problem with it. Like, I was thinking about the Ray Wise thing, the bowling alley scene in season 3, and stuff like that. I just sort of like, okay, well, if you can make it work, then I'm into it, and it was the same thing with Ole Munch. I was like, well, okay, I guess we're going back in time, and this guy's been around for 500 years, so if there's a good reason for it, then I'm there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it always remains to be seen is like how will it pay off?
Yeah.
Usually,
well, with
like
that in particular,
yeah.
I kind of like the idea of the debt. All the stuff they were talking about with debts before that, and then that situation where this guy he takes on everybody's debt, right? And if he never dies, then what does that even mean? There's just a lot of, it's fun to think about, at least, you know what I mean? Like, I could see why it could be annoying, but I'll generally kind of eat that stuff up.
Yeah, I'm curious, and I'm happier if they kind of let the mystery be. But I'm wondering if they'll do that or kind of like put an exclamation point on the Ole Munch stuff.
Yeah,
I want to talk about so your thoughts on the series in general, or this season in general, are maybe a little bit more positive than Jim. I will say that I really like this episode with some caveats. Yeah. What did you think about Linda, this 7th episode of Fargo?
Yeah, I did like this a lot. No one really likes it was all a dream reveal. You know what I mean? So if you can actually pull that off, I think that's something. It's a strong choice creatively, and I guess you could say a challenge, right? Like this is something that that going into it, if you're the writer, that like this is something that people will potentially hate if we don't do it right. And so, yeah, I think they pulled it off. And, there's sometimes stuff like that can be more fun to think about than to actually watch. But I thought the way that this played out, I was pretty much captivated the whole time. Like it's not one of those things that I didn't know how I felt about it at the end. And then I came around on it. Like I thought it was good the first time I watched it. I enjoyed it. And I think it's funny because there's like a ton of clues along the way of like where it's going, and because it's Fargo, you really can't be sure, you know what I mean? So there's sort of like a self-awareness there that I think it's fun to see how they played with that. And then also, you know, it's satisfying when you go back and the reveal happens, you know, afterwards, and you're like, okay, I see all those things, and you know, it all makes sense. So I thought that was pretty good. And then the other thing, it was just, I like this idea of you know, a post-truth existence, you know what I mean? So I thought it fit in with that pretty well too. Because like when it was playing out, I was like, okay, so what is it that she's trying to do? Because she's running into all this resistance from them, right? They want her to make the puppet. They want her to do this elaborate process to share her truth. So you're thinking like, why is she in such a hurry to get out of there? And it's because she wants Linda to come back to back up her story, you know, because she has a real fear that no one's going to believe her. And, you know, that's kind of the thing about Roy, you know what I mean? Like, that's so infuriating is like, he's got power in his own little, you know, fear there. And so he can basically just say whatever he wants and call that the truth. You know what I mean? I thought that was like a good way to get to that and to just sort of carry that through the episode.
Yeah, like I said, I really like this episode, but I got my process of watching it. So I'm sitting here and I'm watching, you know, I haven't seen Fargo for 2 weeks. I started watching it and I'm like, okay, this is, you know, like me and Jim were discussing yesterday. We didn't see Dot at all the previous episode, so it's going to be a Dot heavy one. You know, like I start, it's like, okay, we're discover this like yellow jacket antler queen woman's type retreat. Okay, we're gonna be forced to make a puppet. All right, I don't know where this is going. A puppet montage, and then so like I got to talk about Noah Hawley's other show, Legion, which I really loved that show. I thought that show was amazing. And when it got to the puppet part, like all my resistance just fell apart because this is just so beautiful, so creative. It's such a like, you know, he did this shit all the time on Legion, where it's like anytime he wanted to tell like a backstory or something, he would get out the paper mache and the arts and crafts and, you know, do this kind of Wes Anderson job on it. And I completely loved it. And I was so involved in the story of how her getting Linda on board that when it turned out to be all a dream, I kind of was a little butthurt about it. I was like, I had just talked myself into all this fantastic Noah Hawley crap, and then it turns out it's just a dream. So like, you know, I've watched it a couple times since then, and you know, my annoyance at having a rug pulled out from underneath me kind of faded, and what they were actually trying to tell, like a very ugly story in a beautiful way, I really admired. And it's like, I think Fargo's going to come down to the final few episodes for me. Like, is all of the things that they're doing in terms of, you know, debt, in terms of the post-truth society, in terms of, you know, their political analysis, is all of this going to come together into something that is worthwhile at the end? And I'm kind of waiting, because for me, a lot of this judgment, like it has been all season, is going to be delayed until we see where it's all going. So I love this episode. Was a little annoyed that it was all just a dream, but also I am patiently awaiting for the season as a whole to make sense. Were you not like throughout the dream, were you not like, maybe this is a dream though? No, dude, no. I don't know why, but like once the puppet stuff started, I was just kind of under its spell. And I'm curious because you said there's a whole bunch of like tells. In you know, what they were doing that kind of could lead people to believe that it was a dream. I'm kind of curious to see, like, maybe point those out as we go along. Because
I could try to. Yeah, I went through a bunch of them whenever I made the video. So yeah, for sure, I'll try to point some of that stuff out.
But I do love when Noah Hawley does the very outside the box visualization of something. You know, like he was so good at doing superhero battles in Legion that turned out to be dance-offs or kabuki puppet shows, or, you know, yarn creatures battling. I really admire that kind of practical visual storytelling. So
yeah, the craft, it looked really good. I agree with you 100% on that.
And I guess they did, like, if the one big tell is her like falling asleep. Like I should have been on, but I was more on alert, like, oh my God, is she going to run off the road, or is she, is she going to have the gas to get to the end of the destination, etc. So do we have any other like general thoughts about the episode, or should we get into the scene by scene recap?
I think that we could probably, just get right into it, because there's quite a bit to talk about on the way, but I can't think of anything that needs to get out, that we need to get out there first.
All right. Well, we open up with a thrilling scene of Munch's adopted mother's real actual son. I think I got the relationships correct there. Returning home.
This guy is, there's really nothing that redeems this character. That's the biggest standout. Like usually there's, you can understand why, like, but this guy is really just, only a mother could love this guy, I think.
And maybe not even that, because I kind of got the idea when Ole Munch and her exchange looks, they're kind of like simpatico about what needs to happen here.
Yeah, I did think about that later, like whenever, how this ends, like what did he tell her when he went back in, like, sorry, I just had to kill your son. And she was like,
your son doesn't live here now. That's what he comes in and says. And she's like, all right, when you put it like that.
I guess, you got to do what you got to do.
More room in the beer budget for me.
I thought that, it seems pretty tactical on their part to have this be like this part, and everything that's not Dot and not directly related to her trip and the dream is pretty light. You know what I mean? It's supposed to give you a different experience, like give you like a valve almost, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that was a good way to start this off, because one real criticism I have of this season that isn't like, that's it's sort of irrational, I guess, but the trailers, a lot of this stuff that we actually saw in the trailer, you know what I mean? Like him attacking this guy with an axe. So, like, exactly where the scene's going to end up. But like, it was still fun to watch. Like the way the guy gets the look on his face that he just got his payday, like I just hit the jackpot. And then a second later, he appears behind him and just sort of whacks him. I guess that's sort of from the Fargo movie too. That's a sort of a
it's like a shot
as well.
Shot for shot, like and in fact, I even think that they made her kid look a little like Steve Buscemi. He's got kind of like that oddly constructed face, kind of like stringy hair. Even with the accent work he's doing, it's this kind of like, in that scene, Steve Buscemi's fed up with who is the guy? I forget the actor who plays the monosyllabic
Stormare.
Peter Stormare. He's fed up with his bullshit, and he's got his face blown off, and he's got this kind of like very pinched and taken advantage of tone of voice. And I feel like that he was aping Buscemi, and then when Ole Munch comes out there with the axe, it's like that's like just a shot for shot remake of that scene. But like I feel like the Steve Buscemi son is not very bright, because you see a guy like Ole Munch talking like Ole Munch, and you shake him down for money, and he pulls out a rubber band bank to the tune of about 10 grand probably. That's not the guy you double down on and be like, yeah, this much every month. Like this is like some kind of cartel executioner from south of the border.
It's totally Salamanca rolls,
That's like what I'm talking about.
No one rolls his money.
No one who's up to any good is banded up like that. And he's just thinking, oh yeah, this is I'm going to hit the titty bar instead of I'm going to hit the ground bleeding. Well, what are you going to do?
Yeah,
I thought, do you think there's any... Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't want to cut you off.
No, it's nothing. Go ahead. I'll wait to hear what you said.
I'm curious did you think that there's something to the odd emphasis on the trade? That, like, Ole Munch, like, exchanging money is... I'm appreciating as a very sacred thing to him, and the fact that him and this mother are in a barter relationship, I think, is got a special significance. I can't quite put my finger on it, but like the way Ole Munch is like, this is a trade. This is not. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I did too, and I'm kind of in the same boat. Like I wasn't 100% sure what they were going for there, except for this is, for him. He obviously made a trade at one time, or he sold his services at one time and incurred this debt. So that's sort of what I was thinking, was that he looks at her as an what they're doing as an equal exchange, like no one's being exploited in that situation.
Right. Do you think, because like Jim and I were trying to think last episode when Roy bought Ole Munch off. Ole Munch says to Roy, it's like, when you dig a hole, a man has to put something in it, or else it's just or when you dig a grave, rather, you have to put something in it, or it's just a hole. And we're kind of debating whether that meant that Ole Munch was still going to be going after Dot, or if that was a warning to Roy, or what's your read on that? Are you looking for Ole Munch to be hitting back at Dot, or me, especially with this Gator business, like Dot's not on his radar at all?
Yeah, I kind of looked at it as like when he walked away prior to Gator coming up to him at the end, like he was kind of okay with like, our business is done. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
I do too.
Like I think that was the way that I interpreted it. And so with the idea with the when a man digs a grave, he has to put something in it. I thought that was a weird way of saying like, I don't know. Like for me, it's over, but I'm not sure that, like, you know what I mean? Like I think he was saying that like Roy still was going to go after Dot. Like he wasn't going to let it, like, because Roy says right before that. Yeah. Because right before that, Roy says, I should leave her alone. But he pretty much says, I can't, I have to keep following this, and that's a really interesting thing about this character is he does have all this power, and he kind of would be all right if he didn't go after Dot, but he can't seem to quit that idea, of getting her to bring her to heel or whatever. I don't know how you would, how to put it into words, but like he wants to dominate her. It's the one thing that doesn't seem to be working out for him. So I kind of connected those two things together.
Yeah, and also like I think that maybe I'm not sure if I believe the Ole Munch is 500 years old. There's a couple of hints that maybe this is like a succession thing, or like it's he's in a long line of sin eaters, but maybe he is. Either way, I think as his capacity as sin eater, he's probably seen a lot of people make fatal mistakes. He's probably seen a lot of people die because they're pursuing these kind of vain revenge kind of fantasies. And I wonder if it was like a signpost type of warning that he was trying to give to Roy. But because we'll see.
Because I never really heard of sin eating before. So then I was thinking about it a lot after that episode aired.
Sure.
And I was thinking, well, wouldn't there be a loophole that if you were a sin eater, if you could just save enough money to have someone eat your sins at the end, you could loophole your way out of it, right?
Apparently that was how they did it back in the Middle Ages. I did some research, and it was accustomed to like, when it's time for the sin eater to eat it, you'd have the new sin eater eat his. And there's kind of some poetry to what they're doing with debt and compounding interest. And because like, what do you do when you're the last sin eater in the world? You're literally bearing the world's sins. What's going to happen?
I mean, I don't know what else we really need to say about Munch right now, because this will be continued later.
Well, it's good because we're headed up the road. Dot's going to a place apparently called Camp Utopia. But along the way, she gets a little tired, has a little scare about running off the road, and decides to make a truck stop at a for some pancakes and coffee.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where I was saying that, like, she changes the radio station because she's falling asleep, and I'm Your Puppet plays on the radio. And that's like one of those songs that you background, like, at least for me, like, I can just put that in the background. That's like background music. It's something I've heard. It's not something that like instantly grabs me, like, oh, this is the song, you know what I mean? So it didn't hit me that that's what it was until she was like way later in the episode when she was getting ready to walk up on that stage and actually do her puppet show. And then I was like, oh, a puppet, you know what I mean? Like, after she's been doing this whole thing. And I was like, that was the song that was playing in the car. So those were the kinds of things that started to, you know what I mean? Started firing in the back of my head.
All the things are going into her dream vision. There's all the things in the background. I see.
Right. Because when she comes into this truck stop, the first shot is an interior, and it's focused on the Camp Utopia postcard, right? And then she walks over to the table and she's like looking up, and she sees a recipe for chicken piccata, and she sees a thing that's about making, like a doll show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So everything in there is stuff that it doesn't mean anything the first time you see it. You know what I mean? But then you see it again, it's repeated in somewhere else, and then you're like, wait a minute, something's going on. At least that's what I thought.
No, you got it.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, I wasn't sure about it until she woke up again.
Right.
You know, when you see her wake up again in front of the pancakes, and then you're like, oh, okay, now she's waking up or whatever. So, yeah. So when she first walked in, you know, the waitress, the conversation the questions she keeps asking are pretty funny, because she can't really answer any of them. You know what I mean? Like, not truthfully. Like, are you running away from something or running towards something? And it's like, well, both, kind of. You know what I mean? And you never really know where she's actually going in this scene either. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, she never gets there, so we don't really know.
Yeah, I'm not sure what her original plan to confront Roy was, but there's going to be bumps along the way. I did like there's a more continuity from the original Fargo film when Dot's driving her Kia from Wayne Lyons Motors naturally. She's got those dealer plates on, which is a big part of the plot in Fargo. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, so this when she, like, there's a moment where she looks at the corkboard and kind of thinks to herself, and she kind of closes her eyes and listens to the music, and this is the exact moment where the episode detours into the dream, I believe.
Yeah, that's the way I thought so. I mean, you could make an argument that she fell asleep when she was driving earlier, but I think it makes more sense that just because you see her wake up there again later.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting when she got back on the road and she goes to this windmill to retrieve the cash. I thought the cash, CAC or CACHE, not CASH. God, I cannot enunciate alphabet today. It's a critical failure. I couldn't help but notice that this stretch of road is this is like where Fargo TV kind of baits me, because like Jim and I have been wondering if Steve Buscemi's buried bag of cash that he marks with the ice scraper will ever be found in this series. And when she pulls up this lonely stretch of like windblown, snow drifted, barbed wire fences, and it's kind of like on the melt, I'm like, is she going to find this giant bag of money finally? Are we finally going to come full circle on Fargo? But no, I'm pretty sure it's a mile away from where he buried it, but I thought that was interesting.
The supermarket king found it.
What, the actual bag, the Steve Buscemi bag from Fargo the movie?
I mean, I thought that was the thing in
well, you've rewatched it originally,
yeah.
or like since I have, like, so I'm gonna. But I thought that was like I thought that was a fake out. That was the Steve Buscemi bag, huh?
Well, because he had this scraper, the ice scraper on, you know, like he had it up on his in a frame, right?
Like I said, you've already exhausted my memories of it. I thought sure that there's somehow that wasn't connected actually, but Well, shit, because like something that's I've been kind of like looking for these past few seasons. So I could be the slowest, slowest person alive.
I like this is kind of funny to talk about this because it's like that was my impression. And I made a video about how all those seasons were connected, and I'm pretty sure that was it was like a couple of years ago though, so it's been a while since I revisited it.
Well, I'll link that. I'll find that video of Pete's, and I'll link it in the show notes, and we can all watch it and talk about it on feedback next week. So Dot gets back on the road and promptly runs out of gas and proceeds to Camp Utopia on foot, where she faints and awakes to find the pleasant lady explaining this Camp Linda thing to her.
Linda,
a true Lindo. This Lindo, I thought sure was an actress from The Expanse. And then I saw she is a Canadian actress. Like, oh, she's got to be from The Expanse. But I could not. I did some deep diving on IMDb. It turns out no. She just kind of looks a little like Julie Mao.
Yeah, she did look a little bit like Julie Mao. I noticed that too.
But it is not. I thought there was a little bit of like dry Fargo humor when, you know, she's explaining, well, we're all Linda here. And she's like, yeah, but my Linda is the actual Linda. She's like, oh, that Linda. I thought that's a very Coen Brothers dry delivery, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did like, I liked that if you looked up the cast, like they all had their initials changed. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah,
because you don't really pick it up like whenever they're talking, but then if you go back and look at it, you can see that they are kind of pronouncing them a little bit differently and things like that.
It's a shocking thing to walk into. She's observing these women in this pitch black room, observing this like very Punch and Judy style puppet play where Judy is just getting the shit punched out of her, and it's graphic. It's somehow very disturbing to see this, kind of innocent puppet, but yet this woman is like putting her back into the screams and the pain and the torment, to the extent that the Dot just blacks out. It's so traumatic to her.
Yeah, and like all of that tracks with what's going on with her, right? Like when she goes out to the windmill, I was like, this doesn't really seem, like it might be something that she would do, right? And then going in here, she's been up for days. Mm-hmm. She was falling asleep at the wheel. So like, yeah, this could definitely make her, she could show up at a place and see something like this and pass out. Like that all is definitely stuff that might be happening in reality, right?
Yeah. I also noticed another thing that I think tracks throughout this vision is that she asks a lot of questions, but no one ever answers her questions. And I think they're trying to hint that like here she asks Lindo, she's like gives her this card and asks her about something, and Lindo just kind of smiles at her and defers to breakfast. And she asks a couple of questions of Linda, and Linda doesn't ever really give her a straight answer. I think they're trying to imply that like Dot has all the answers. She's like looking for other answers in other places, but like all the answers are inside her.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And another thing about Lindo too is the audio wasn't synced up when she first wakes up.
Yeah, the Goldilocks business.
That was another big clue to me. I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? Like at first I was like, is there just something wrong with the stream or whatever? You know what I mean? And I went back and watched it, and it's like, it's very deliberate that it snaps back into place whenever Dot talks, not her. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it's interesting.
That was another big hint that like, okay, something's happening here. I'm not exactly sure what, but
So she's after Linda Tillman, which we're going to surmise is Roy's wife, and Dot gets a tour from Lindo before she finally meets Saint Linda, and Saint Linda challenges her to a puppet off about her truth. Her point of view is, Linda, you abandoned me and Gator. You fed us to Roy Tillman, and then you use that to affect your escape.
Yeah. I mean, it's about abandonment, but it is also about that she she believes that she brought her home in order to be a decoy so that she could get away, which is like, you know, I think it's one of the more interesting things the episode does, because you don't really know. Obviously, you don't know anything about the real Linda. You know, you only know what this 15-year-old saw when she was brought into this situation that was like insanely traumatic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as we go on, I mean, that's one of the things that I keep thinking about, because one of my favorite parts is when she walks up to her and she hits her, right? And she says, "I'm sure you think I deserve that," or something along those lines, right? And you know, if you think about Roy and his ideas of what his wife should be, and of course they're all batshit, but I mean that's what he's operating under, right? Everything he's doing to these women, they deserve, right? So I thought that was an interesting thing for her to say there, was that I'm sure you think I deserve that.
Do you think, because like, you know, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that later you're thinking like, well, can we believe everything that Dot believes? Because, you know, obviously she has these feelings about Linda, but Linda was also in that same kind of situation. So it's a little more complicated. Like I do believe everything that she, you know, that happened to her, you know, at Roy's hands. But I think that there's a little bit more of a, you know, I'm not sure that everything is exactly how she remembers it, as far as like the way that she puts things on Linda.
Well, one thing that I guess I think, and this is not something I know, it's something I think, is that Linda's probably dead. You know, the FBI agents talked about how, you know, his first wife has gone missing, presumed dead. Like, I think that Dot is overlying her experience. And maybe this is a warning to her, because Linda's fixated about like, oh, well, you're accusing me of leaving you, but don't you have a daughter? Haven't you left? And Dot saying, well, yeah, I'm going to go back. I wonder if this is Dot's subconscious being worried that the path that she's going on is going to lead in her death, and she will effectively abandon Wayne and Dot. Wayne and Scotty, just like she was abandoned. Although being abandoned to Wayne is a lot different than being abandoned to Roy. But I wonder if there is a little bit of her self-conscious kind of giving her a warning about like, maybe this isn't the way to go, because the reality is Linda probably didn't escape. Like the reality is probably Roy took her out to the woods and shot her, and then made Dot his new wife.
Yeah, that was certainly the where I landed at the end of this episode, was that when she wakes up and this is all a dream, it's like, okay, well, none of that is real. What's really likely to happen based on what we saw in her play? Roy says that she just left in the middle of the night. So, I mean, we know enough about Roy at this point that you wouldn't put it past him to just, okay, I got this replacement, let's get rid of the old one. It's in, you know, she's in the way. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, also her getting away from him doesn't jive with his other comments he made about like, I've never had any problem before or since, you know, breaking or controlling a woman. So it's like, if another woman got away, although I guess Roy's the type of guy who would maybe gloss over that. But I think Saint Linda is, and that's the other thing. It's like, it's now that I'm thinking about it, it's kind of referring to her as a saint. You can't have a living saint. You don't say that
about people who are still alive. Yeah.
No, you gotta. One of the steps becoming a saint is dying first. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm
pretty important one too, in the hierarchy of things.
True. So Wayne, it turns out, in his slightly scrambled state, has a new car sales philosophy. You don't need to make trades. You don't need to have a cash offer. You just car for car. You got 4 wheels. I got 4 wheels. Let's make a deal here.
Man, I love Wayne. He's one of the best parts of this season, I think.
He is great. And I really liked his salesman's consternation with like, well, that's just not how capitalism works, you know? And like, why not? That's what it says in the Bible. Car for car. It's like, that's what Moses wrote down in tablets.
Yeah, there's a lot. There was a ton of great stuff in this little scene. Like, obviously Scotty's pretty adorable whenever it's just like, when they're just together, those two. It makes you think back to like I guess it was like the first or second episode. He said, "I just want to play sock hockey and watch Real Housewives," or whatever it was he wanted to do with Scotty.
Yeah.
But yeah, the salesman calls the car a Sportage instead of a Sportage. Did you catch that?
I didn't, but like also I'm not sure that I wouldn't call a Kia Sportage. It sounds like when you mispronounce, like intentionally mispronounce Target.
You would never see. Yeah,
like
exactly.
The store Target. It's not Target, it's Target. Like
it's
you
not
try
like
to.
People go around. Yeah, people don't go around saying the word out loud. You know what I mean? It's just there.
Yeah.
So he calls it a Sportage, which I thought was pretty hilarious. And then, like you said, he's just like, "What do you want to do about this?" And he's like, "Car for a car." He's like, "Well, that's not how we stay in business, basically." You know what I mean?
Is there anything in the echidna talk? Knuckles from Sonic the Hedgehog, like the spiny anteater or whatever. Is there?
I don't know.
Is that just some funny thing for Scotty to be babbling about in the background?
Yeah, I guess it could be. I'm surprised I didn't look that up, but I didn't look up the spiny anteater. I mean, I knew the platypus right away. Like, I thought I was so smart whenever she asked the question. I was like, "Well, it's a platypus. I know that." The spiny anteater is a mystery to me, so I'm not sure if there's anything.
I think they're hitting because like this is one of the fascinations of this is the duality between masculinity and femininity and things that kind of cross those boundaries. And I think when you're talking about what are these things called, like intramines, the marsupials, the mammals that lay eggs or that like do a different, like there's kind of like they're a little bit of lizard, they're a little bit of mammal, they're a little bit of bird. I wonder if this is another thing that's reinforcing that Scotty, as like tomboy at the least, not manifesting traditional female gender present. I wonder if they're trying to reinforce it with that.
Maybe, yeah. Like I said, I'm surprised that I didn't look into that, but it's an interesting point that you make.
And then Wayne kind of loses track of reality at the end and like planning on getting donuts with Dot and Scotty reminds him that the Dot is gone. And I thought that was a sweet moment where Scotty's like, Mom would probably want us to have vegetables. And they're like, there's no, the thing what they're getting away is there's not any real distress from Scotty that her mom's gone missing. This isn't a scary thing to her, really. It's something that's almost like a part of like this post-truth fantasy, like she's having an adventure that the Wayne's got to lean into in the story he tells her later.
Yeah, I thought that, I got a little bit of a sense that they were showing that she was taking care of him. You know what I mean? Like he was, I think he's much improved in this episode compared to the last one. Whenever he was,
the wires are starting to uncross.
With Wink but it's almost like there's almost a comparison there of like he's there with his father in the last one and they were both just like mumbling idiots, you know what I mean? But and in this one it's like she's at least trying to keep him on the right track and trying to do the responsible thing, like, well, we should probably not go get donuts because Mom wouldn't want us to eat vegetables or whatever. So I thought that was just kind of a cool thing to show how they were keeping things together even though she was gone.
So moving on, Dot, we're back at Camp Utopia, and Dot tries to rush the puppet making process because she's got a head of steam and places to be, and kind of unsuccessfully, and then the women have dinner.
It's pretty good comedic acting by Juno Temple in here when she tries to cut that wooden block. I thought that was pretty funny.
So he's like, well, it seems like you're trying to rush this process. And she's like, yeah, no shit. I like that.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. And you need those little moments in there because it's pretty dark otherwise.
And in this dinner scene where like Dot tries to get to why Linda hasn't talked about Gator, I think this is like the crux of my, this fantasy cannot tell Dot anything about the world that she doesn't know. because like Linda, like this is something you'd expect her to engage with a little bit, and Linda just sits there passively while Dot kind of supplies information about what she thinks about, and then the dream validates her. It's like, oh, you're so perceptive, but it doesn't ever add anything to the conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's true, and I think it ties into what you were saying earlier, which I didn't want to get into too much because I knew Gator was going to come up again, but I think that this is her saying, like, asking Linda why Linda isn't asking about Gator, but it's also her asking herself, like, why am I not doing something about the fact that Gator's still there?
Does she feel like she abandoned Gator? Yeah, that like Linda's dead in actuality, and Dot got out, or I guess Nadine got out, but she left Gator there.
Right, because Gator's not her son. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
Even if she was raising him as a stepmom for a period of time, it's not exactly the same. It's not 1-to-1. But I mean, if she's human, which we know that she is, then she must have some underlying feelings of abandoning him, because they just saw each other face to face in a couple episodes back, and she sees what he's turning into, right? She talks about it right here.
Yeah.
That she thinks, there's something there, that he wants to be good, but he wants to be like his dad.
More.
So I think that a lot of that stuff is where, you know what I mean? Like some of that stuff she has to put on Linda because she can't really, she can't really sort it herself. Like she says it later whenever she's talking about the she forgives her because it's fight or flight. That's what she was doing. She was running for her life, but it's still not clean. It still feels like, ooh, maybe I could have done something. You know what I mean?
So because Linda says you can't rush the process, you wouldn't be here if you didn't have to go through the process. This is Dot's own subconscious trying to wrestle with the guilt before she faces Roy. She has to wrestle with the guilt of leaving Gator behind, or how she feels about that, or her forgiving Linda is a proxy for her forgiving herself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's not. I mean, I don't know if I have a really straightforward, coherent, but that was just the sense that I had, was that she was working through her own relationship with these memories, right? Yeah. And so part of it is that she's trying to protect herself, I guess, right? Like, whenever you have really terrible stuff in your past, like thinking about it isn't necessarily healthy, right? Mm-hmm. So she's trying to, like, so maybe she tries to transfer a little bit of that into Linda, and like, if Linda would take responsibility for what happened, then somehow that would make it better. It wouldn't change anything really, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I just think it's that it's maybe not like she's expecting something to get some kind of clarity that's going to make it all right or whatever, but she just sort of has to look at it as it really is, so that she can face him, you know what I mean? Because that's inevitable as far as where the story's going, right?
Yeah. Were you kind of blown away with the revelation that Gator's 27 years old? Because I was thinking, it seems from the commentary around us and the feedback, I felt like everybody was assuming, and maybe it's because Joe Keery or Carey is playing like a teenager on Stranger Things, but I was thinking he was in his early 20s, like just kind of starting off on the force, just becoming a man. Like being 27, you've been a man capable of your own independent action and thought for a good long while, and it says something different about being under Roy's thumb than being like 22 and in that same position, or 19, in that same position.
Yeah, I didn't really think much about it, like, because I was thinking about her age and how close they were then. But
that makes him like a brother-sister more than a mom-son kind of thing.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, you're like fully in, like, you're a screw up if you're in your early 20s, but you're like pushing, like, I don't know, like failure, like,
yeah.
Like, at that age, right? Because I mean, it's not like he's going to wake up. He seems to me like one of those people that peaked at some point.
Maybe in high school when he was all-star, all-state quarterback, and it's just been all downhill since then.
Yeah, and I mean, he's pretty much been given a license to do whatever he wants. You know what I mean? And he's got a pretty bad example in his father of like whatever. But I mean, it's kind of sad when you think about it that this is a legacy, and it's pretty like in the early episodes I wasn't sure how he felt about Gator, but as each one goes on, you realize that he's just like, yeah, my son is a total screw up that isn't going to really follow in my footsteps,
I thought last episode added an interesting shading where, like, from Roy's perspective, he thought Gator was a winner, and it's almost like you've hit the skids, you've had a curse put on you by Ole Munch.
That's true.
That did recontextualize things, but I also could be Roy putting because I mentioned this in the last episode that, like, over the break I watched The Godfather, like 1, 2, and 3. And that's a story. It's like, nothing's, like ultimately the thing that's wrong with Michael is that the family business is dying. Like, like the mafia, is just on the way out. Like they had their apex, and now the feds are starting to close in. There's the drug problem. They're having Senate hearings. There's trial. There's like, even if Michael was the only way Michael could have avoided going down is to never gotten into the game and played in the first place. And I wonder if they're telling the same story about like Roy and his dad and his, like, these were men that indisputably ruled their counties or whatever. And just like the time for that is just over. Like, people have caught on and to the family business, and like Tony Soprano, that was all his arc, is like he was inheriting a rotten business, a failing business. And I feel like that's the same thing with Roy, that Roy and Gator especially are the inheritors of a failing business that clock ran out probably 30 years ago, and they're just trying to stay one step ahead from the inevitable change is going to sweep them out of power. So it's like Gator's, sure, Gator's got problems, but it's not that Gator's a fuck up. It's just that there's no way you're going to keep this thing going in the modern era.
Yeah, and I mean, all of that goes back to Roy anyways, right? I mean, he's such a larger than life character. You can't get too big and bright or else, he'd probably want to knock you down because you're taking up too much of his attention or whatever. Mm. And then, obviously, like, we don't know how things were whenever, he was growing up under his father or whatever. But yeah, it's obviously a different situation now.
Yeah.
And like, giving him everything and being able to just like, use the law however they wish to further their interests. I mean, that's not a game that you can continue to play forever.
Yeah. Next scene, we see Gator using his tracker to try to bag an Ole Munch out of season. It is not the legal season to hunt Ole Munches, so he runs into some problems. What do you think about this one?
Did you have any inclination that this was the bad son in the rocking chair?
Not until, like, as soon as I saw the head, because first I was like, holy shit, Gator did it. Or I thought it was going to be the mom. I thought, like, when it turned out it was going to be the mom sitting there, but then it became clear that it's the fail son that had one last use in death that he never had in life. I gotta say, I appreciate them making Ole Munch a weird guy, like an Anton Sugar type, because like any other person, I would be like, bullshit. No one is sitting there night after night tugging a rope to
this
make.
Dude definitely is.
But this guy's the one that would commit to the bit. I got the money in the back seat. I got the light on and the rocking chair, and I'm going to get the son of a bitch.
And he got that full pack of smokes off of the sun too. You know what I mean? So like, really, until those run out, he
right. What else has he got to do?
Yeah, he's just.
But it's also he's literally baited, and he's like jigging a trap. It's like he's a fisherman with that lure, and he's just kind of jigging it. He's just jigging it and you'll sit there for hours and hours to catch your fish, and he bagged the gator.
It's a pretty good edit how they show his boots, just like they did whenever they introduced him. Mm-hmm. And then it's not a bait and switch, like he's really doing that with his feet. It's just in the other room with the rope making the other chair move.
Yeah, yeah. And then we got mom. So Gator, he thinks he's won, and it's funny the way he plays, like he can't believe it himself. Like, holy shit, I did the thing, you know. And he goes up to retrieve his tracker, and he notices that the money bag, apparently still full of money, is back in Munch's back seat. So he breaks in, but unfortunately, and they've set this up, this like collision course with old Mama Munch dragging her groceries down the frozen path. She accuses him of being a thief.
Basket of 6-packs.
That's true. They scuffle. She loses her footing and smashes her head open on the frozen curb. Speaking of Godfather references, oranges scatter everywhere.
Oranges everywhere, yeah. I was thinking that the whole time you were telling the Godfather story.
I did. So yeah, like Holly's got the oranges in there. And then how would you describe the look that Old Munch comes out of the house with here?
Oh man, I don't know. It's sort of like it's sort of like the way I described it when I was writing about it was that it's the opposite of what we see on Dot's face after she tells her story. You know what I mean? Like it's the polar opposite. It's like, it's kind of like, you know, it's like an anticlimax or something. You know what I mean? Like it's everything. It's like he doesn't like explode outward. It all goes inward, and it's just like the worst thing that possibly could happen to him.
Yeah, it's like something that's offensive to the very fiber of his being has happened. And I couldn't quite put my finger on exactly what is his ethic, what is his ethos, but like whatever his whole deal is, this is deeply offensive to him, what just happened, you know?
100%, yeah. It's
because
like the worst thing that...
They had a trade, and his end of it was to be the guard dog, right? So what's a sin eater who's done this like ethical fair trade and didn't live up to his end of the bargain gonna do? I would say nothing good.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought it was an interesting choice. You know, you mentioned that you said the money's still in the bag. Like, even if the money wasn't, like, even if that was just like like a bait for him to see,
which it might be. I was asserting I don't know.
Yeah,
that it's
I mean,
full of money.
I think it's about equally as likely that he just left it in there because he has no other than giving.
Exactly.
You know, Salamanca rolls out of his back pocket to the son when he comes in. He doesn't really have that much use for cash. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, like, I think it's equally as possible that the actual bag of money's back there. But even if it wasn't, if he just did it as bait, I feel like as far as the man that we've seen and everything that he said, that like taking the money back, like undoing reinstating the debt, like that's a big deal, right? Because if in the last episode that they sort of were like, okay, our business is done, now their business has restarted, and he's made it a whole lot worse by killing the only thing that we know that he cares about in the world.
Yeah, it's a double whammy. Not only has Old Munch now reneged on his portion of the contract with the old woman, but Gator has reneged on the old man settling their score, so he's got double debts now open.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know how you can see all of that and not come to the conclusion that his existence is now to make the Tillmans pay for what they've done. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be bloody and spectacular, no doubt. I don't know how many goats are going to die, how much shit's going to be smeared, what kind of runes are going to be involved, but it's going to be something biblical, probably literally.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on to a sweeter scene where Wayne is reading Scotty an extemporaneous bedtime story.
Yeah, it's super cute. The whole fake book and the story. I mean, I guess the point of this is that, you know, he understands that she's worried, but, you know, this is what she's doing is important, and, you know, she has to do it, and they know she can do anything. What is it that he says? You can't if you don't go anywhere, you can't come home or something like that.
Yeah, you can't come home until she gets where she's going, or until you've been to a place. That's it. Until you've been to a place, you can't come back home, because otherwise, that's a nonsensical. You got to go somewhere before you can come back home.
Yeah. So,
which is it's interesting.
I really enjoyed that.
I thought there was obviously Fargo in later seasons has been increasingly kind of infatuated with Wizard of Oz references, and we got Dorothy, and everywhere she goes is rainbows. I'm wondering if we will get another explicit Wizard of the Oz reference this year, or if this is just more internal referent. But I thought the interesting thing is before Wayne's accident, he was increasingly agitated by his wife telling him obvious lies. And I think in this scene is him kind of surrendering to, I don't know what your mom's doing. I don't know. I know it's dangerous, but I also know your mom is a hero, and she's got to do this, and she's going to be all right. Wayne is no longer sweating the details, and it's probably his mental state helping it out. But that's what I got out of this, that he's no longer under distress about what's going on with Dot.
Yeah, I was wondering when I was watching this episode if they were trying to, or if there was some hints that he was changed permanently, because
maybe.
Because he is improving, but he's still quite a distance from 100%. So
yeah, I don't know if he's going to, because that's the thing. It's I remember being introduced to this term in my early 20s when I injured myself in a work accident. And a doctor says, well, you've reached maximum medical improvement. And I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? It's it means your elbow is going to be fucked up for the rest of your life, but it's as good as we can make it. I'm not sure, because until the healing gets to a point where it plateaus and ceases, so I'm not sure if they're telling a story of him going to be getting his brains back, or if he is going to be fundamentally forever changed. I could go either way, to be honest. Do you think that Dot? So what is Dot? I wonder what Dot makes of a Wayne that has his clock speed lowered a little bit. Is that something she will be? Because her subconscious is telling me this episode is she's over the moon for Wayne. That this is not I kind of in the back of my mind wondered if some of this is a little bit of an act, that she's grateful for Wayne for being gentle and kind, but she doesn't really love him. He's a good dad, but he doesn't. But I think that she really thinks he's a catch. That she truly is madly in love with him, based on everything her subconscious is saying. So, yeah. I think that that's what I that's sort of where I landed after this episode, was that she definitely needed him. She needed that relationship. Whenever she was running, that seems to be true, but I think that she found something real in that relationship, and that she really does appreciate and love him, for real. It's not just this guy is is sort of easy to get over on, and I get what I need, and blah blah blah. I think that everything that she's saying is pretty sincere. And I think that seems to be, because otherwise it's kind of you brought up the Wizard of Oz, and I've been kind of staying away from the whole Oz thing, because it's obviously there's obviously a lot of different things that are related to Wizard of Oz, but the problem I'm having with it is trying to figure out where, because you're talking about Dorothy, in the Wizard of Oz, Dorothy runs away from home, and she realizes that it's it's the best place in the world. She can't wait to go back there, right? So that's what she already, this Dorothy already started out knowing that in the first place, right? And she's been trying not to leave home, and so I don't know what the slant is that they're going with, but inverted Wizard of Oz. I wonder if they would do something like that, where you had the black and white to turn to color. I wonder if they'd have color that turns to black and white to fully invert the Wizard of Oz experience, to show that she is going, her Technicolor place is her home, and where she's Roy's place is this dark, depressing, dreary. I wonder if they would, I could see Holly doing that if he really wanted to fully invert the scenario like you're suggesting.
Yeah, because I mean, I think that that's what she wants. That's really the only thing she wants is to be like done with all of this, so that she can just go home and be there with them.
Watch
you know
Desperate
what I mean?
Housewives and play sock hockey with Scotty. Yeah.
Yeah. So all this other stuff is really messing up their chi. You know what I'm saying? Like,
their feng shui. The house has not been properly feng shuied. So moving on, we see Dot finish her puppet with a fast and frantic puppet making montage. And properly equipped, she stages her play to tell her truth about the situation between her and Linda. She made a lot more than this one puppet, and I guess in Dream Rules it all checks out. But like that's my first thought. Like is the last vestiges of my protesting mind were blown away by the amazing puppet sequence. I thought, wait a second, she made one puppet. Now we got Gator puppets, and we got Linda puppets, and we got Roy puppets, but obviously that's a stupid thing to worry about because none of this is real.
When it was going on, like the way that I justified that before I was like 100% Dream was that
I've got one too.
Whenever she turns, whenever the puppet turns, that's whenever the screen sort of goes wide and it becomes the whole thing. It's not really on the little stage anymore.
Yeah,
and I don't think you see any of the other puppets until you go into that. So I was like, okay, well they're just dramatizing it now or whatever. You know what I mean?
My rationalization was, well, this is Linda's retreat. It's not beyond the realm of possibility that she herself would have made a Linda puppet, a Roy puppet, and a Gator puppet. But again, we're rationalizing. We're rationalizing the literally irrational here. So, but yeah, she tells her whole story about being a little girl, becoming a woman, instantly noticing the stares of the wolves around her, and her fleeing that. She gets busted for shoplifting, but Linda, the wife of Roy, who's already the powerful sheriff of the county, intervenes, says she's with her. And this is pretty much a much more graphic and complete accounting of what Dot has said, that, she came there 15 as a kind of starving runaway. She was taken in, kind of polished up, and then eventually replaced and preyed on by Ray as his wife for a few years before she manages to get away. And we're going to see, the truth, of Roy's violence. We got a hint of that last episode where he slaps his current wife for cutting his ear. But, we really see a brutal side of Roy where... Yeah,
this was like the next level for sure.
Yeah, and I thought it was really powerful how when you got to the part of play where Roy's beating her with a stick, that they kept intercutting that with the police scene photos of her beating and broken body and all that kind of stuff. It is, like I said, doing this in puppet form gives it a weird kind of power. Because I'm just desensitized to seeing people get the shit beat out of them from all the weird mature warning prestige shit I watch, but seeing it in puppet form made it somehow more visceral.
Yeah, I said the same thing whenever I was writing my script for my video, was that it somehow does make it a little bit it makes it more palatable, you know what I mean? Like in a way, but it also makes it a little more real because it's like there's so much effort that goes into just staging that, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
it leaves an impression, a different kind of impression.
And it's a really interesting how the wedding dress kind of came down when it's time for her to get married, and he had replaced Linda with her, and it's kind of spinning, and then you see the Roy beating her, and then the way it was done was just like an assault on the senses, and I thought it was just incredibly effective. I'm trying to think if there's anything new that we got out of here. Is this the even sadder story of a woman, Linda, who tried to feed this young woman to her husband in an effort to get away and wound up getting herself killed? Do you think... I'm trying to think of how intentional it was, because it did seem when she's like, you know what, Roy, I can't possibly teach this girl math and science. It's way too hard for my lady brain. You're the one that's good at that. it's hard to see that as not being an intentional ploy. But it's also something that Roy would want his woman to say, to condition. Like, oh, I could maybe teach her writing and some of the soft shit, but if you want STEM, you're going to have to go to the man, honey. So
yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a complicated situation because we know from his new wife that they sort of like think of themselves as like religious, right? I mean, they think that they're doing God's work or whatever. So
yeah,
that all fits under that umbrella, like that. And I don't know, like we know that she knows that Roy's violent and that he obviously was raising Gator, but we don't know that she would immediately think that if she brought in a 15-year-old that he would, like you said, just sort of kill her. Groom the 15-year-old girl. Like we don't know that he showed that kind of being that kind of a predator before.
It is wild because also internally Dot, like when she sees Roy, she's like, oh, this isn't a wolf. He's big and he's powerful and he's stern, but he's like a dad, and he's funny. I like him. And I wonder if this is like subconsciously, like she's put off giving Roy the agency of like, well, Roy wouldn't have done this, but his wife put him up to it. Is like her like as like 14, 15-year-old, you're not. I mean, that's one of the sad things about children of sexual abuse is a lot of times they internalize and deflect a lot of things from their abuser because dealing with the reality of you being victimized and taken advantage of is very, very painful and it's very hard. Thing.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought they were trying to get at. Like I said, I didn't have like a really clear, like, okay, this is 1-to-1. This is exactly what they're trying to show. But I just thought they were trying to highlight that, like how it's not something that's black and white in any way. I mean, like of course the abuse itself, that is something that is we know that that's something that really happened. But then like there's so much else that you have to do that I think that would happen that you would have to like sort of protect yourself from in a way.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's why and the other thing I guess we learned for sure is that the abuse started with Gator pretty young. He's getting backhands. There's also another interesting thing that they followed from last. Me and Jim were debating about whether Roy's talking about the Bulls, the cock is like is this another hint of his kind of like sexual deviancy, and Gator being like, well, you can learn a lot by watching studs at breeding time, and his dad kind of belting him for it. Like I'm starting to Roy's got some weird shit underneath the hood. Like they've pretty much made that clear, and it gets more and more clear as the weeks go on.
Yeah, scary dude.
So she earns her new nickname. Linda is impressed with her pitch, and she earns her new name, Dorothy Lyon, and Linda agrees to go face Roy with her.
That's the moment where I was like, this is definitely not real. Not right. At least not all of it.
Yeah, because they never actually talk about the plan. It's just like, it's very dream logic where it's like, what you want, so everyone else in the dream knows what you want, and then that doesn't have to really be explained.
Yeah, she just says, "Okay, you're right. You told your truth, and I agree. I'm going to do what you want."
And you get to the Christian. She gets to a point where she asks the critical question of like, "Why didn't you take us with you?" And she doesn't respond because probably she's dead. And that's when I think this is the crux of maybe what Nadine/Dot had to wrestle with. Why did you leave Gator? Why did you leave your family now? Why are you attacked? Why instead of the flight or fight, instead of fleeing, they explain to Wayne's like, hey, we got to take off. We got to get out of here. We got to maybe get your mom, who's got powerful legal connections, to help. But she's just fighting. She's turning and facing it. Is that the smartest thing? I think these are all things that she's wrestling with subconsciously. And
yeah, because that's the Fargo thing, right? The Fargo thing is that the person does something, shit snowballs way out of control. They ended up like going from like doing something that's devious and whatever, but shit becomes life or death. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And if they would just tell the truth, then it would all stop, but they can't. That's like the one thing that they can't do. You know what I mean? That's why the whole thing with Dot up until this episode had really been kind of, I was like, well, why, you know, like, it's so frustrating that she just doesn't tell Whit and Indira, like, look, this guy came, he's trying to kidnap me. He thinks I should go live with him because, you know, we were married at one point, and he thinks that means that he owns me for the rest of my life. Like, all of this stuff would make sense to people, and they would work to try to stop it from happening. Right. But like, in her mind, she's worried that they won't believe her, you know what I mean? Or that they can't hold him accountable. And that's why she needs Linda in her mind, is because if Linda would tell the truth, then people would believe it.
I wonder if there's an element of like, she's embarrassed that, like, you know, you know, like, even though she was 15 and she didn't really have any choice in the matter, like, I put myself in this situation, like, in retrospect, it seems so obvious and I was such a fool and I should have got out. But like, is there, because there's two possibilities. Number one, that she committed some pretty serious crimes in getting away from Roy, and she's worried that would blow back on her. And the other is just like the inability to accept that you were once a child and you got taken advantage of or victimized. You know, this reinforces the, you know, Indira's speech last time, that, like, you know, nobody wants to be thought of as a victim. Like, the idea that people are, like, you know, wanting to, you know, like, in large numbers cultivate some victim complex is ridiculous. But the reality is people get victimized, and that's when it happens to you, you have to, like, you have to reevaluate your life. Like, I am a victim. I am someone who can be victimized. I am someone who can be taken advantage of and used and discarded. And that's always, no matter how smart and capable you are, a blow to your self-conceptual. Because you don't, you know, when you're born playing your toys as a kid, you don't think of yourself as someone like that, you know.
But then also, I mean, that's true. And then, but to add to that, it's like also, and it's also an acknowledgement that it could happen again. You know what I mean?
If it happened once, oh my God, it could happen again. And you're kind of powerless to stop that, right? You don't have any ultimate control over what happens to you in your life, not as much as you imagine yourself.
Right. And that's, I mean, I think that's really where abuse, it really is something that, you know, you can understand it wasn't your fault. You can understand that it, you know, that this is a sick individual doing sick things, and not everyone's that way. But like, can you ever really feel safe? Because it, you know, that I mean, that's the struggle, right? Is to actually be able to live and not be in fear of it. Because once it has happened, then, you know, things are different.
Yeah, and just like physical scars and ailments, like, sometimes you make a full recovery, sometimes you're stronger and better than other, and sometimes you reach maximum medical improvement, and you're always going to have some sort of impairment in your trust or your, and but yeah, it can be the work of a lifetime. It seems like Dot's kind of going through it right now. Yeah,
and I mean, I think you know, this dream, it really does, it doesn't answer any of those questions, like some of the things you're talking about there about, like, you know, why did she get with Wayne in the first place? And you know, is part of it just, you know, making a facade to show that she's, like, you know, doing better than she was or whatever. But like, that's how life is, right? I mean, things happen and they don't stop. Like, you know, they just keep going. And so, like, I think that they have created that situation where, you know, there's a lot of things about her that we don't know for sure, but we have a pretty good sense that, you know, her heart is in the right place. You know what I mean? Like, she's doing things for the, you know, for the people that she cares about. She's trying to protect that thing that she thinks is worth fighting for. And yeah, you know, she might not be making all the best choices in the heat of the moment, but, like, you know, at the end of the day, she's a character that we can root for and hope that she makes it back, you know, with those people.
I wonder if we'll see the return of the puppets. Because I know that sometimes Holly like will have this big kind of swing where he introduces a piece of visual language and then he'll riff on that later on in the season. I saw him do that with a lot with Legion. I've seen him do it occasionally with Fargo. I could see, like, imagine the Nadine or Dot and Roy have their confrontation and you know, Dot lays out this case against him and he tries the abuser thing where he tries a gaslight and he's like, oh, Nadine, you got your wires crossed. It's that. I could see them going back to puppet mode to give, like, Roy's side of the story before she ultimately defeats him. I wonder if we'll because it's like, yeah, I don't know. I think we'll see.
I mean, I think his is implied in a lot of the other stuff that we've heard him tell other people, like the guy who he threw the coffee in his face in the first in episode 2. You know, he's basically saying, like, look, dude, I know, I get it. Like, you know, you want to beat her sometimes, and sometimes that's okay, but, like, you know, if she's not doing anything where she deserves it, then you gotta lay off, you know.
So you think in Roy's mind he's, because like it's interesting to revisit those scenes with these scenes in context. Do you think that Roy in his mind all of his wives deserved what they got, or do you think at some level him condemning this kid was him condemning himself?
Well, I don't know, but I mean, I think that he tells himself that they deserved it. I mean, I don't know that we have enough of an insight into his interior. I mean, I don't know that we need one, really. I mean,
but
that's sort of like the headline is this guy is you know, a serial abuser that you know, I mean, where did his third wife come from, and how old was she whenever
she's pretty young, like, already.
She still looks pretty young.
Yeah, younger than Dot, I think. Maybe the same age, but because that's where I was getting with the puppet thing is, like, you're right that they have consciously refused to talk on this show about how Dot actually escaped, and I wonder if she has suppressed some things that Roy's going to throw at her that's going to cause her, you know, because, like, again, this you just said it yourself, like, this episode raises a bunch of questions that are on Dot's mind but doesn't resolve them, and I'm like, well, these questions have to be resolved affirmatively. Like, no, I did not abandon Gator, or if I did, you can't judge me because of the flight or fight. And, you know, no one really knows how they're going to act when they're, you know, with their backs against the wall. Like, she has to wrestle with that. And I could see, you know, Roy doing his gaslight manipulating thing in the form of a puppet show and her fighting again. I think that would be visually and thematically interesting, but I don't know. Yeah, maybe I just want to see the puppet some more.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing the puppets more. That's true, and you're right, because when you said that at first, I was thinking that you were talking more about, like, Roy's point of view, but it's actually that is actually, there could be something that he could use against her, and that does make sense. There's
and she's already got a little bit of guilt in her subconscious anyway. There's no way that they're leaving all these question marks, and also there's a lot of question marks about Dot. Like, you said you listened to a couple of our early podcasts. Like, what did you make of the fact that Dot covered on foot an 8-hour drive in a single evening? Like, is that geographical ignorance, or is she got a little bit of the metaphysical gumbo that the Ole Munch has got?
Yeah, that's sort of been swept under the rug. Like, it hasn't really come back up. But I thought the same thing. I saw someone mention it online, and then I looked at where those two places were, and I was like, that's like an 8-hour drive.
I'm just riffing here,
and she left on foot.
I'm just riffing here, but are they setting up a sin, like a sin? Because we talked about, like, you know, what happens when a sin eater gets old and he's about to go to hell? Well, you get a young sin eater to eat his sins. Is there something with this domestic abuse cycle where Roy gets a wife, breaks her, the wife escapes somehow, but there's always a debt or a burden that she leaves behind in the form of Nadine or Gator? Or is there something to where, like, that there's a similarity? There's some kind of similarity there between like the one woman eating the sins of another woman, and this is. I don't mean that like the women deserve all this, but there's this eating the abuse for another one to escape into a better life. And then another one comes on, and that one gets they get to go into the better life and escape. You know, it gets all problematic because, like, I think a lot of these women, other than Dot, got murdered. But are they trying to do a little bit of a similarity or some thematic similarities there between Ole Munch and Dot?
Yeah, I mean, I've been wondering about how those two are going to become allies. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like that they probably would.
It's almost inevitable, yeah.
I mean, they would be like both have the same enemy or whatever, but I thought there was a real chance that they might actually team up. I was wondering how that might come together, but
that's fun. It reminds me of like season 3. We had Nikki Swango teaming up with
Wrench.
Mr. Wrench. Yeah, Wrench. That's always fun to see allies, found allies against a common threat. But there's a lot of things I wonder, because like obviously Roy's the big bad, but also Miss Lion is kind of a big bad. Jim and I were debating last episode as who's the bigger monster. You got Roy, who's dishing out pain and misery retail to his family, the people in his community. You got Lorraine, who's dishing out misery at a wholesale level across the entire country, victimizing people, robbing them of their peace, of their prosperity. She has to be dealt with too, and it seems like they're on a course where she's going to redeem and kind of be an ally of Dot, maybe. After she looked at her,
I think there's a real indication that she, like in the last episode, I think it was just the last one, where that scene where Scotty comes in and gives Wayne a hug, and she smiles, and then Indira sees her smiling, and so she stops. Like, I thought there was a real, besides her looking at the folder at the end, you know what I mean? And sort of, was that 2 episodes ago?
It was last episode that the folder thing happened.
So, I thought, that's setting up something, right? Like, at least her having a change of heart. And I think also Indira saying that they have a lot in common. I mean, they kind of do, except for Dot isn't nearly as evil as Lorraine is. Like, Lorraine's fun to watch, and she's turned into one of my favorite characters in that sense. But you're right. I mean, she's got some major red flags in the way that she lives her life that you can't, great performance aside, and
but it's legalized gangsterism. Like, there's nothing, she's not really breaking the law. So like in the karmic rules of Fargo, I'm not sure if it's going to apply to her. But it'd feel weird if she just walks out of this season scot-free, not learning a lesson, not paying a cost, not talking about Lorraine here.
Yeah, because that's equally infuriating as Roy doing it in a way, right?
Yeah. All right. Next scene, she wakes up the diner. And to say that I was reeling over the next minute or two is an understatement, because like that first time I'm watching this, I was the dumbest watcher alive. I did not pick up any of the cues. I was fully enraptured by the puppet scene, and I was like really curious to see like, well, how the hell is Linda going to help out in this situation? Smash cut to her at the diner. None of it's real. I'm processing this as she stumbles out to the parking lot and then immediately gets involved in a pedestrian semi accident. And I'm like, what is that? Yeah, it was a wild first watch experience. Because you were hip to the dream, but the car situation had to have blown you away.
Yeah, no, I thought at the time I was like, I was kind of just in awe, like just sort of shocked. But I really came to appreciate that after the fact, because it's like, that's so brutal that in her dream she got what she wanted, and she thinks everything's going to be okay, and then it's just a dream. Like for you, that's a rug pull. For her, that's like horrible. You know what I mean?
It's one of those dreams you wake up and it's like it was so real and something that you wanted so bad, like getting a bike for your birthday, and you wake up like, shit, it's 8 months to my birthday, I got no new bike. You just like you almost mourn the loss. Yeah,
it really is a loss because it felt real. That's what I thought. And then like to see that they pulled that absurd car accident and I mean, they said that it's pretty well, the way they shot it, it looks like it's actually Juno Temple getting hit by that car skidding across the parking lot.
And it's extremely believable because the entire episode, they had made a point that there had been an ice storm and the streets are covered in ice and it's very slick. And also the physics involved, it kind of felt like, yeah, that's exactly the hit that would send you to the hospital but not kill you. You know, like you're going to hit your head, but like the SUV had lost a lot of its momentum before it actually turned into, and yeah, it was, I was just gibbering on my couch trying to think of what is going on. What am I going to say about this scene? And then as I'm processing all this, Dot comes to the hospital with a head injury. And I saw where this is going immediately, that when the nurse, is like, I think Roy's an all right guy in the looks department, but to say he's a looker or he's easy on the eyes, I don't know about that. And just as Dot's figuring out, here comes Roy, and he says he's got her. This is just a cliffhanger. I don't know there's much to say about this other than it seems like an impossible situation for Dot to escape, because she escaped him one time, but doing it again, that with his foreknowledge and with her completely in his power in this way, how is she possibly going to get out?
Yeah, he doesn't look worried about it. That's the thing that you kind of see at the end there, is that he feels like he's won. The big thing I thought about this was sort of what you said, was the way that it's obvious it's going to be him. Like everyone in, like, it's the opposite of the dream, right? Like in the dream, there's a lot of things that don't quite add up, and you know that maybe something's going on, but nobody really, I think, was convinced that it was a dream until it's actually revealed. This they did this one the other way around. It's like, obviously it's not going to be Wayne that walks through the door, and I thought that was a pretty good way to handle that.
Go from dream to the waking nightmare. Although I will say there's no possible way. Pulling off a Band-Aid quick. There's no possible way they're going for this literally being a nightmare, right? Like this is the equal and opposite of the Linda, that this is then she's going to wake up at the beginning of the next episode and she's at a hospital, but Roy's not there. No, there's no way. There's no way they'll double dream us.
No.
One thing I thought is, like, what if she just tells the nurse, like, this isn't my husband, this is a crazy situation, this guy's like, I feel like that Roy has the trump card of her. Like, I think her official records say that she's Nadine. If they look up her medical records, and the fact she's got a head injury, the medical people might be like, well, she's got, she's acting quote unquote hysterical. And also, like,
technically she's escaped from a locked mental ward.
True.
Right? Same moment.
True. So, but I don't know that the hospital releases. Yeah, and I don't think the hospital releases her to Roy's care. So but also, like, my idea is that this is in Roy's county. Like, do you get that same feeling? That
it's very possible. Like I said before, they never really say where she was going. Like she never reveals that.
I mean, you kind of think she's heading to Roy's, but
she's been on the road for a while. Like, she's been on the road for a period of, like, it's not this, like, she left at night at least, right?
Enough for a Kia Sportage to run its tank dry.
So
I have to look up what the range is on that.
The implication is that she's been, on the move for quite a while, so she could certainly be in his neck of the woods.
It's a bad spot. It's one of, I love it when they put the hero in a position where, like, I can't. This is the opposite of an old Batman show where it's like, I have no freaking clue how she's going. But I think there's a lot of clues. Like, Indira says, your daughter-in-law will never ask for help, but she needs it. It does seem like a lot of cavalry is coming. You've got Indira and the state police.
Yeah.
You've got, I think you got Miss Lyon. You got Ole Munch. Like, Dorothy is going to have a lot of unsought for help in the last few episodes, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, Roy said it like we mentioned this earlier. Like when he was talking to Munch, he says I should probably leave her alone, and he really should. Like, it's I don't know what you could say like is driving him at this point.
It's Ahab and the whale. It's personal.
It's the one. I guess in his mind, yeah, she's the one that he couldn't break, so he wants to finish the job.
Does that expose a flaw in his own masculinity? It's like, in his idea that any man could break any woman, and he's more than any man. He's like the manliest man, and that's like, yeah, like it's like a crack in his psyche that he failed there.
Yeah, and I guess the inciting incident was that her prince hit the system and popped up. So he had been waiting for that to happen, something like that to happen for like a decade, right? 9 or 10 years.
Alive or dead, yeah. Huh.
So I guess that is very, it tracks with who they told us he was. She just did a really good job of hiding, so it hasn't been an issue until now.
Right. So this is the episode. Is there anything else that you want to throw in here? Any other closing thoughts?
No, I think we pretty much hit on everything. I'm trying to think. Yeah, so I mean, whenever you think about this idea of where it's going, like what would be I am really kind of curious about Lorraine, but like everything else, I mean, it just seems to be pointing towards like, Roy is going to go down, in a blaze of glory, right?
Yeah, there's the open questions I have is how does Roy get taken down, or which of the forces are raised against him will take him down? Is there something more to the Ole Munch? Are we going to get like a definitive, like this is a 500-year-old man? Is he not? And then, like what is the proper comeuppance for? Also, I guess like is Gator going to? Is which side of his is going to win? And Holly talked in an interview about he's a Jack Skeleton figure where he's kind of like trying to do better than he is. So is there any redemption for him? And then like what's the appropriate comeuppance for Lorraine Lyon?
I mean,
that's a lot to deal with, and not a lot of episodes left.
Yeah, but that's a tricky one with Gator, isn't it? Because like obviously he's a victim too, but he's gone so far beyond like,
and making him 27. Like if he was 21, I would say that's a different. But 27 is kind of. It's never too late. It's never too late to change your. Like if you're 35 and you feel like Gator out there and like, oh shit, Pete and A.Ron say hang it up. I'm a fuck up. I mean, no, not in real life, but
we're talking about like a very specific narrative in a
narrative fiction,
10-episode TV show.
A narrative fiction with 3 episodes to go. What kind of redemption does a guy like Gator have at 27, growing up in Roy Tillmans' backyard?
It almost has to be sort of like a symbolic one, like I don't.
He can redeem, he sacrifices himself and redeems himself spiritually.
I think so, kind of. I mean, like, it would seem funny if he walked away without consequence.
Does Ole Munch eat his sins? Does Ole Munch kill him but eat his sin?
I don't know. I mean, he walked into the guy's neighborhood with like he killed Irma, the Mama Munch by accident, but I mean he went with a scope rifle and tried to shoot Munch in the head, like what I mean? Like
but I don't know the Munch, like that's not. I wonder if that's offensive to him because in like as Munch is, I don't think Munch would say he's an innocent. Like above and beyond the sin eating, like Munch does crime for hire. He does murder, kidnapping for hire.
That's true.
So
that's true.
I think he's offended by the transactional loss and the fact that a relative innocent, a put upon poor woman whose son rules her like a tyrant king. Like I think that's an innocent in his eyes, but I don't think he'd be offended that they attempt to kill him.
as I read the same article that you read, and I mean, I think the way that he says it is that he's really a softie.
Yeah.
Like that's the way he described Gator. But like, yeah, he might really be a softie, but he's also like a pretty advanced, criminal at the same time. You know what I mean?
His dad
like
got him in.
He kills people. He actually, he's not just an accomplice because of who he is. Like he actually proactively
Have we
does
seen
that kind of stuff
Gator
himself.
kill someone though?
I mean, he tried to kill Munch. He
tried, but he failed. And I think like with the karmic.
But if it had been what he thought he was looking at, he would have, right?
Well, he did kill Mama Munch. Like it's hard to say that that's not like murder,
That's like more of a manslaughter kind of situation.
Well, but when you're doing it in the commission of a crime, I was about to go that. It's like, I guess it's manslaughter, but I think legally, if you accidentally kill someone, like robbing a bank, you murdered that guy.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah,
there's a term for that. That's
it's like it's like you're already doing something you knew you shouldn't be doing, so everything else kind of gets under that like knowingly commission of a crime. Like it's not beyond the realm of possibility that an old woman would see you breaking into the car and try to stop you, and then you scuff. So maybe this is, and I wonder if this is. I would be surprised with him being 27, but I do wonder if this is the first person he's killed directly. Not his dad, not his dad's farmhands, not his dad's militiamen that he was there kind of riding shotgun for, but this is the first one he actually did himself.
Yeah, because when he was going to kill Munch in the first episode, it wasn't him, it was the other guys, right?
Yeah.
Like he had trigger guys there that.
Yeah. Could be, but again, I'd be surprised at 27.
He covered up some shit, if nothing else.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's hard to say he's innocent, especially again. I guess I'm still processing the fact that he's almost 30.
I do
anything
love
else?
The hair, though. I that's one thing that it took a while for me for that to click for me, but like I really got an appreciation for this haircut that they make him wear.
It's such a great move to untypecast him, right? Because he's the pretty boy Steve with great hair, teaching Dustin how to have great hair in Stranger Things, and now you shave it off and make him a shitbird. It's a great way to file the serial numbers off his career and you kind of use him as raw clay.
Yeah, he's doing a pretty good job too. I think pretty consistently across the board that this season has. Like I thought in 4, I thought that some of the stuff that they were doing, it just seemed like it was dissonant a little bit. You know what I mean? Like Schwartzman and the guy from Gomorrah. Like I thought that they kind of like it wasn't like they didn't know how to act or something like that. It was obviously under the direction of like this is the way that they wanted them to be. But I just thought it didn't really work that well. And this season, I think, is a lot more consistent across the board.
Well, if that's it, Pete, I appreciate so much for you pitching in on short notice for our friend Jim here, who's fallen ill. You've got a great channel,
no problem.
Pete Peppers. How do people find you? And again, this is kind of for form, because I'm going to throw a link to that similarities of Fargo video, which will link you to his channel. But where do people find you?
Yeah, they can just search Pete Peppers on YouTube. It's really easy. It comes up that way. At Pete Peppers on Twitter and Threads and most of the other social media. I'm not the biggest poster in the world, but you can find me there and all those places that you look. Name's not that hard to remember.
We have a lot of content in common. Like right now, you're doing For All Mankind and Fargo Like Us. Anything on the horizon that you're excited about?
Yeah, there's actually kind of a lot of different things that I'm looking at. I'm definitely going to do True Detective.
Okay, I think we're doing that too.
And I'm thinking about maybe Masters of the Air is coming up soon.
I would like that. It's a hard sell for Jim for whatever reason, because I don't think he's like Band of Brothers, Pacific War, kind of like, up on the whole Spielberg, Tom Hanks collabs. But I'm interested in that. What about Shogun? I'm really kind of interested in seeing how that shakes out.
That's a book I read as a young man that I really liked a lot, and I thought the trailer looked pretty awesome.
My dad says it's his favorite novel, and I've never read it. I'm thinking about picking it up before the series, and I don't know if that's a good move or a bad move. But I'm trying to lobby hard the Jim to cover Shogun, because that looks really hot.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't reread it recently, but I read it more than once, and it's long.
Oh, I know. It's a tome.
I think that there's a little bit of a. I mean, it's fictionalized from a Westerner's point of view,
right?
I think that that there's probably some critique of that's probably fair. But as far as what it is, if you're reading it and you're looking at it like that, it's a pretty good story. Should make for a good miniseries, I think.
And there's I think we talked about this before, the 3-body problem. Is that something it's on your radar?
Yeah, that was supposed to come out in January. They moved that back to March. That's definitely something that I'm excited about. Which
actually helps us a bit, because we were looking, because we want to, we're kind of chained to The Walking Dead, like Michonne in season 2, and they're having the Michonne Rick miniseries come out, so like we're almost obligated to cover that. And it's like, man, it was going to really bunch up, and then pushing that back kind of made things a little easier on us, I think. But well, it sounds like we're going to be having lots of stuff to talk about, and lots of stuff that our fans would be interested in what you got to say.
And there's another one that I'm kind of excited about coming out in February. I think it's Constellation. That
one's not on my radar.
It's an Apple TV space show. It's got Jonathan Banks in it.
Hell yes.
Like Ermin Trout. Yeah. It's supposed to be like something happens on the International Space Station. I haven't seen any of it yet.
Jonathan Banks, you don't think of him big on sci-fi, but he kicked off The Expanse. He was in the first episode of that.
Yeah, he was in the
as the XO of the shit. Remember the Cant.
Yeah, he lost his mind.
Gotta feel his toes in the dirt. That's saying I'll have to check into that, because that sounds kind of up my alley. I love Apple TV and what they're doing with their sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, I think that's at the end. I think it's to the end of February.
Gotcha.
That one comes out.
Well, again, Pete, thanks so much for being pressed
thanks for having
me. You're great. You're a great co-host. Please check out his channel on YouTube, Pete Peppers. And we will be catching up to feedback next. So we're finally caught up to Fargo. The latest episode dropped last night. I will have another co-host or possibly Pete in the next day or two to get that knocked out, and we will catch up with feedback then. If you would like to send us feedback about this episode or any of the ones that we were kind of like podcasting or not podcasting through, Fargo@baldmove.com is how you do that. And as far as our social medias, if you want to keep follow with what we're doing this year and seeing which episodes and shows we're covering, which films we're covering, we can be followed at Bald Move everywhere except for TikTok. We're at Baldest Move. Once again, Pete, thanks so much. And
no problem, man.
I'm sure we'll be talking in the future. But until the next episode of Fargo, I'm your host, A.Ron. This is Pete. We'll see you on the next one.